Football has never been short of great defenders. Strong defenders, fearless defenders, world-class defenders. But only one made the position look completely different. That man was Franz Beckenbauer. He did not play with panic, he played with patience. He did not simply stop attacks, he started them. He turned defending into an art. That is why his name survived long after his final match. Not because of one trophy or one World Cup, but because the people who understood football best saw something extraordinary in him. They saw intelligence, leadership, elegance, and a level of composure that few players have ever matched. Over the years, some of football's greatest names tried to explain what made Franz Beckenbauer so special. Each remembered something different, yet all of them arrived at the same conclusion. There was only one Der Kaiser. Today, we're going to discover what football's biggest legends really said about Franz Beckenbauer and why his influence continues to live on in every generation of football. Subscribe, because legends like Franz Beckenbauer deserve to be remembered long after the final whistle. Sir Bobby Charlton knew greatness when he saw it. He had played against some of football's finest players, yet Franz Beckenbauer always stood apart. Charlton once described him as a marvelous distributor, a great tackler, always cool, never looking under pressure. Those words explained exactly why Beckenbauer was different. He never looked rushed, never looked uncomfortable. Even in football's biggest moments. Born in Munich on 11 September 1945, Beckenbauer joined Bayern Munich as a teenager. He would help transform the club into one of Europe's greatest powers. League titles followed, then 3 consecutive European Cups, then World Cup glory as captain of West Germany. But Charlton's admiration was never about trophies, it was about intelligence. While most defenders stopped attacks, Beckenbauer began them. He controlled matches with calmness, rather than chaos. That was what Sir Bobby Charlton respected most, and it was only the beginning of the extraordinary praise Franz Beckenbauer would receive from football's greatest legends. If anyone understood elegance, it was Michel Platini. He knew that greatness was not only about winning, it was about how you played the game. After Franz Beckenbauer's passing, Platini said he was the epitome of class on and off the pitch. Coming from Platini, those words meant everything. Beckenbauer never relied on fear or aggression. He earned respect through intelligence, through leadership, and through the calm confidence he carried into every match. His style inspired players far beyond Germany. He proved that a defender could control a game without chasing it. For Platini, Beckenbauer was never just another football legend. He was a standard that very few players could ever hope to reach. Football has changed again and again. New formations, new tactics, new generations. But one thing has never changed: Franz Beckenbauer's influence. Modern Germany manager Julian Nagelsmann explained it perfectly. He said, he reinterpreted the role of the libero. He could float across the pitch as if he were weightless. That was Beckenbauer's greatest gift. He never accepted the limits of his position. While most defenders stayed at the back, he stepped into midfield. He carried the ball with confidence, picked passes others never saw, and turned defense into the beginning of every attack. He made football look effortless. Not because it was easy, but because he understood the game before everyone else. That intelligence changed the way coaches thought, changed the way defenders played, and changed what young footballers believed a defender could become. Long before the world admired ball-playing centre-backs, Franz Beckenbauer had already become the example. That is why even today's coaches still speak about him as the man who changed modern defending forever. Strikers usually remember defenders for the problems they caused, the tackles, the battles, the frustration. Gary Lineker remembered Franz Beckenbauer for something completely different. After Beckenbauer's passing, Lineker said, "One of the all-time greats, Der Kaiser, was the most beautiful of footballers who won the World Cup, both as a player and manager. That choice of words was remarkable, beautiful. It is not a word often used for defenders, but Beckenbauer was never ordinary. He played with elegance. Every touch had purpose. Every pass had confidence. He never looked rushed, never looked reckless. Even under the greatest pressure, he seemed completely in control. Lineker understood that Beckenbauer's greatness was not built on power. It was built on intelligence, on timing, on knowing exactly when to step forward and when to let the game come to him. That rare combination turned a defender into one of football's greatest artists. And decades after his retirement, even one of England's greatest goalscorers still remembered him, not for destroying football, but for making it look beautiful. No tribute carried more emotion than the words of Berti Vogts. He had shared the dressing room, the victories, and some of Germany's greatest moments with Franz Beckenbauer. So when Beckenbauer passed away, Vogts spoke from the heart. He said, "For me, Franz Beckenbauer is the greatest player Germany has ever produced." That was not nostalgia. It was the opinion of a teammate who had seen greatness up close. Together, they helped lead West Germany to European glory, then to World Cup glory in 1974. Vogts saw how Beckenbauer inspired everyone around him. He never needed to be the loudest voice. His football did the talking. His leadership created belief. And his calmness spread through the entire team. That is why, for Berti Vogts, Franz Beckenbauer was never simply a teammate. He was the player who set the standard. For every generation of German football that followed, many people admired Franz Beckenbauer from a distance. Uli Hoeneß lived alongside him as a teammate, a colleague, and a friend. That is why his tribute carried special meaning. After Beckenbauer's passing, Hoeneß said, "Franz Beckenbauer was the greatest personality FC Bayern has ever had. Not just the greatest player, the greatest personality." That says everything. Beckenbauer helped transform Bayern Munich from an ambitious German club into one of football's biggest institutions. His influence did not end when he stopped playing. He returned as manager, later became club president, then an ambassador for Bayern across the world. Few footballers have shaped one club in so many different roles. To Bayern supporters, he was far more than a legend. He became part of the club's identity. That is why Uli Hoeneß believed nobody could truly replace him. Franz Beckenbauer did not simply leave behind a list of trophies. He left behind a standard that Bayern Munich still tries to live up to today. For decades, Franz Beckenbauer looked untouchable. On the pitch, everything seemed under control. But life away from football was very different. In 2015, he suffered one of the greatest losses any parent can face. His son, Stefan, passed away after a long illness. It was a tragedy, from which many close to Beckenbauer believed he never fully recovered. As the years passed, his own health began to decline. Public appearances became rare. The man who had once stood at the center of world football slowly disappeared from the spotlight. His final years were also clouded by investigations linked to Germany's 2006 World Cup bid. Beckenbauer denied any wrongdoing, and the case was never concluded with a final judgment. Even so, the controversy cast a shadow over one of football's brightest legacies. On 7th of January 2024, football lost a Kaiser. He was 78 years old. Tributes poured in from every corner of the football world, because despite the pain, despite the illness, and despite the controversy, the respect he had earned never disappeared. His final chapter may have been filled with silence, but his legacy never was. Franz Beckenbauer's career eventually came to an end. His influence never did. Every generation produces great defenders, but very few change the position forever. Beckenbauer did exactly that. Long before modern football praised ball-playing centre-backs, he had already shown what a defender could become. His intelligence, changed tactics. His leadership inspired teammates, and his calmness became the standard that countless players tried to follow. That is why football's biggest legends remembered him with such respect. Not because he collected trophies, but because he changed the way football itself was played. Even today, his ideas can still be seen every weekend. Whenever a defender carries the ball forward, starts an attack, or refuses to panic under pressure, part of Franz Beckenbauer's legacy lives on. Years will continue to pass. New stars will arrive. New champions will lift trophies. But football rarely creates another Der Kaiser. Some players become champions. Some become legends. But only a select few become the standard that every generation continues to chase. And when football's greatest names all speak with the same respect, history usually listens. Subscribe now for more unforgettable football legends, their greatest moments, their toughest battles, and the stories that made them immortal. Because legends like Franz Beckenbauer should never be forgotten.